Well, good morning. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Tom Robinson. I'm with A&O Inc. We are an independent distributor of sinks and faucets, primarily to granite fabricators. Our primary product is Eclipse. It's not our only product, it's our primary product, because we believe it's the best sink on the market. When we go to coverings and Stone Expo and those, all the other guys come to Jim and I want to tap into our market, and we have not found a reliable source for a quality sink other than Eclipse. So my mission today is fourfold. First of all, we're going to talk about stainless steel, what it is, why it makes a good sink material, what's good and what's bad about it, and then we're going to relate that to Eclipse products. Then we're going to talk about the Eclipse faucets. I think you're probably all familiar with the Eclipse faucets, but we're going to show you a few new things and remind you of what the unique selling propositions are so you can present them to your customers. The third thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about, we have a new product, the Friendo faucets. Troy asked me to introduce to you guys. You don't have them at the current thing. He wanted me to show them to you, and then you guys decide whether or not you want to handle them. And the fourth thing is to tie it all in together, how it all works as a system. Okay. Stainless steel. Stainless steel, the definition of stainless steel is 11% chromium. Okay, you take iron, you add chromium. You guys probably have a hammer at home. It's made of stainless steel. It doesn't rust. And by the way, stainless steel is a misnomer. Stainless steel will stain, it won't rust. Okay? So the hammer you have at home, it's made of stainless steel so it won't rust. It's probably got some small amount of chromium to make it stainless steel. But it's not real shiny. It's not shiny like a sink. Sinks, a good sink should be made out of 304 stainless steel. Why? First of all, the definition of 304 stainless is 18% chromium, okay, and 8% nickel. The 18% chromium is what makes it shiny. Okay, so if it's got less than 18% chromium, it won't be as shiny. Nickel hardens the finish and makes it last longer. Now you guys have probably seen, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but when your guys go out and they tear out a top that was put in by a track builder with a drop-in sink and it's kind of yellowish or brownish, that's because there's not enough nickel in it. It's just not, the finish isn't lasting as long as it should. Now, sinks, about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago now, there was a tariff on Chinese sinks. You may have heard of that. Mm-hmm. Chinese sinks instantly went up 70% in about, overnight, went up 70%. The good manufacturers like Eclipse found another source. They moved their plant from China to Korea and started making these. This is a Korean sink. A lot of there was a shortage of sinks. Right after that, there was a shortage of sinks. Because the tariff, they said that, okay, the tariff's 70%, but you know what, if we decide it should have been 100%, anything you bring in after that time period, you have to pay the difference. Okay? So nobody knew. They're buying sinks and don't really know what they're buying.
I can go, Lacey, because it's probably important to do this again.
Thank you.
Okay. So, a lot of that went on. Then all of a sudden, guys are what they call trans-shipping. They're taking the sinks, sending them to Vietnam, and then importing them and calling them Vietnamese sinks. A lot of those got caught. Some of the guys went back to the Chinese factory and said, hey, we can't afford 70%. How do we make this cheaper? So they made cheaper steel, cheaper processes, all kinds of things to make the sink cheaper. There are more bad, cheap sinks on the market today than there were 2 years ago. Then a year ago, after the tariff had been in place for a year, They re-looked at it and said, oh, you know what, 70% is too high because the guy who filed the suit that caused it is making cheaper sinks. Okay, now, so they reduced it to 30%, but they said, okay, but remember, if we decide later it's 70% again, you're reliable for anything you did. So anybody that is thinking long-term is probably moving out of China. It's just too much risk. Okay. A lot of the bad guys went back to the factory and said, you know, make it cheap. So that's why you're seeing all kinds of stuff. Now, sinks are required by code. When Trenton, Illinois, I don't know if it's even a town, it's an incorporated town, whatever, towns don't write building codes. What they do is they get the model codes. You've heard of Uniform Plumbing Code, International Building Code, and the Canadian Plumbing Code. Those are the big three ones. They will adopt one of those codes and then modify it for local conditions. So they'll take that and they say, okay, well, our plumbing inspector likes this kind of pipe or whatever. So they'll make some changes to it, but the model code is the base code. All the model codes require that the sink, all the components of a sink, faucet, pipes, toilet, water heater, all the components of the plumbing system must be certified to meet ASTM 112.19.3. Did you ever go to the big box stores and you walk by all the pipes are laying up against the wall and they all have writing down the sides, red or blue siding? That's what it'll say. It'll tell you the certification. Back when people were buying sinks from the plumbing supply houses were plumbers. They knew what they were, you know, they were self-policing it because they knew the requirement. Then came the free sink and the internet, and guys were giving away a free sink. So what's the most important requirement? If you're giving away a free sink, the most important thing is how cheap can I get it? So they went on the internet and found anything, didn't care if it was certified, didn't care what it was made out of. If it didn't cause too many problems, they were buying it. Sinks, see that they're required to have the manufacturer's name or logo. They're required to have the model number of the sink, and they're required to have the UPC or the independent agency that did the certification. About 3 years ago, we started making an issue about telling people like you and other fabricators, hey, that sink that you're buying for, you know, under $100 is not certified. And they said, well, nobody cares, nobody does it. All of a sudden, all the other manufacturers started coming up with fake certifications. They came up with Chinese certifications, which don't meet. One of the big wholesale slab guys had certification on their brochure, and it was a Chinese certification that didn't meet U.S. requirements. UPC stopped that, and next time I went around, all they disappeared. You will sometimes see stickers on sinks. Stickers doesn't meet, it has to be stamped right on it, that say meets UPC requirements. That doesn't mean it's certified to meet it. It means they've decided to tell you. But if they're cutting a corner by not having a real certification, what other corner are they cutting? Okay, so certification, your customer's probably not going to know about it. The building inspectors, quite frankly, probably don't inspect for it. I've only found one building inspector in the 8 states I cover that does. But it's possible that somebody can say, hey, that's not a certified sink, take it out. Okay. But if somebody is cutting corners on the certification, what else are they cutting on? Now, there is an internet sink that uses our DXF file. They got our DXF file on the internet and created a sink. If you take the same model number, they use our model numbers. If you take our model number, put it, my 18 gauge, now remember 18 gauge is lighter than 16. 16 is heavier, it's the reverse of what you think. If you take my 18 gauge and put it next to his 16 gauge, and I've done this with a number of fabricators, mine is brighter, shinier, and heavier. My 18 gauge is heavier than his 16 gauge. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about why that is, but if it doesn't have, I can prove mine's 304, he calls his 304. Okay, if it's not as shiny, it can't be. If it's not as heavy, how can it be 16 gauge? Okay. So that's kind of a thumbnail sketch of stainless steel. We talked about the 18 gauge is thinner. we don't recommend anything less than 18 gauge in a granite top. The advantage of a heavier sink, the heavier the sink is, when you turn on the water, you'll get less, noise. You will notice guys bragging about the pads all over the sink. There's no pads on the side of this sink. Okay? Almost always, the more pads, the cheaper the sink. Now, all sinks should have them on the bottom, not so much for sound, although that helps with sound, but on the bottom you need them so that if you put cold water in the sink, you don't get condensation. So it's condensation as well as sound pads. So anybody who's bragging about now those pads are made out of recycled tires. What's cheaper, good steel or recycled tires? Okay, so if they're bragging about the pads, that's like bragging about a negative to make it a positive. It's a sales trick. Okay, why Eclipse Stainless? Better steel, certified quality, better process, and Eclipse Brand. And what does that all mean to you? Better steel, this is really 304 stainless. Makes it out of 301 stainless. 301 is 16% chromium and 6% nickel, which means it won't last as long. And if you put that sink in next to that $3,000 refrigerator, all of a sudden it's not going to match because it's duller than the refrigerator. All appliances are 304. That's appliance grade stainless steel. All your appliances and however what's in it. Okay. Certified quality. I meet building code and I can prove it's 304. I can prove it's got 18% chromium. I can prove it's got 8% nickel. I'm only aware of 2 other sinks, and not the big brand name. The big brand names do it, but names that, the secondary tier, if you will. I only know of 2 that meet that requirement. Okay? Better processes. There's 3 ways to make a sink. The kind of old-fashioned way is you press 2 bowls and weld the top on it. You will see, with those, you will see a seam right in here. It's problematic because you're welding right where all the water is. I've seen some rust. You've got an extra weld. It's rare anymore. There's only one company I know of that's making it still. The other way is you press the right bowl, then the left bowl, and then you weld them together. When you do that, see the weld mark there? Okay? You are welding these 2 bowls together. The third way is you press both bowls at the same time. When you press one bowl at a time, you're getting an even, all the sides are even. When you press both bowls at the same time, you're pressing a lot. You can see where it's pressed, you can see how it stretches. See how that stretches? Now, with Eclipse, you're cutting off that stretch and welding them together. When you press 2 bowls at a time, you're stretching all that out of this center rail. Okay, so the center rail gets thinner. It also can get more, I don't want to call them dents, but little defects, little ripples, dimples, particularly right where the bottom meets this center wall, but it can be anywhere on the bottom. Just imperfections. Now, with the cheap sinks, that's normal. They'll tell you, well, that's just the way the sinks are made. You don't get that with the Eclipse premium sinks. Okay? So that's the better processes. The other thing is Eclipse is the brushing. You probably have heard of the new matte finish or the flat finish sinks. A flat finish sink is a Korean sink, not only Korean, but typically Korean. They stamp the sink and send it out. There's no finish at all on it. The brushing helps. First of all, it's standard in the American market. Most people are looking for it. With a matte finish, you scratch it, there's absolutely nothing you can do with it. I had a sink that I carried around for 3 years. And I went and I was telling one of my prospects that it's a good sink, that I could fix it. And so he took his keys out and he scratched the sink. Well, I carried the sink around, and I went back in his shop and I repaired it, and he now buys sinks from me. A year later, I'm driving around, and you won't believe this, but one of my guys forgot to order a sink. And I pulled up and he said, in my sample sink, and I said, you know, I'm showing him the sample sink. He says, I need that sink. I said, what do you mean you need that sink? He says, I need that sink. I forgot to order one. I've got to put it in. We went in his shop, cleaned up the sink, and it's now in somebody's house. That's how good you can clean up, even though that was scratched and run around my car for 3.5 years. So that's it. Now, we're talking about matte finish. They stamp the sink and send it out. They don't do any finish on it. You can't repair it. It's a cheaper process, but...
So how do you repair them?
I'm glad you asked that.
I was gonna ask, but I didn't know if I missed it.
Most minor scratches can come out with, this is Scotch Brite. Most scratches will come out with this. This is a product called Scratch Away. We sell it, but you can buy it on the internet. You know what it is this is like soft scrub. I don't know what's in it, magic. But you wet the sink, you spray this on, and these are like fine pads that match the pattern in the sink, and it'll take. I've had guys drop tools in it and take out the scratches. You can take out pretty deep scratches with it. Okay. The only problem is you gotta be careful when you give it to the guys in the truck, because they tell you what color to use and what order, and there's not a self-respecting fabricator who knows what dusty mauve or seafoam green is.
Yeah.
So you have to be a little careful with them. Okay, all our sinks standard come with one basket strainer. The strainers now have a brushing on them rather than the high polished look. Okay, these are great basket strainers, but don't try to buy them and use them on your porcelain or composite sinks, because these are threads. They're not long enough. It doesn't work. They're not long. They're not made. They're made for stainless steel sinks.
Oh.
Okay. Anything I missed? Do you want to know more about? I know you're all dying to know all about stainless steel sinks.
Actually, how do you repair it though? You said with that. How did you?
Go in like...
You wet it, put on this stuff, and rub it in the direction of the.
Okay.
It'll come out.
Okay. All right.
So if you didn't have that Scratch Away Barkeeper's Friend and a damp Scotch
Well, this is the best thing to use to clean. Absolutely the best
in
thing
the
to clean.
direction.
You're better off in the direction of the brushing. I've taken some pretty nasty stuff out of with this. I even take scratches out of the faucets with this. This is marvelous.
What about rust? Like from a dish drying?
This will take that out.
Okay.
Okay. Let's talk about rust in the sink. 11% chromium, you won't rust. It's probably, if you get somebody calling, my sink is rusting, I get about once a quarter get somebody saying their sink is rusting. I've never had one that was actually the sink rusting. Grandma's knife. I had one guy call me up and said, I said, what does it look like? He says, half moon shape. I said, what kind of dog do you have? You take dog food cans and leave them in the sink with, the peaches and stuff have some sort of health code, they can't rust. But a dog food can, you leave it in the sink with water around it, it'll leave a rust mark. Water is the biggest source. You know, if you guys are out here with wells and things like, you get iron coming out of there. If they don't dry their sink, you will get it. I had one guy that I was working on the sink. I said, boy, this looks like, you know, the husband and wife were both looking over my shoulder, and I said, boy, this looks like somebody was cleaning the carburetor here, and the husband walked away. So I get a, now, that leads me into another area, and Alice is expert at this. The one thing about Eclipse is the Eclipse brand. What does that mean to you? Eclipse has been making sinks for 10 years, which doesn't sound like a very long time, but in the sink servicing the granite fabricator market, it's the oldest sink out there without the Kohlers and the LKs and the big brands. If you have an issue with a sink or any A&O product, you send me the name, address, phone number, what they bought, and when they bought it, and we take care of it. That includes if we get the rusty sink call. I had a lady call me, fabricator call me, said, we got a rusty sink. New customer, so I ran right out to see the rusty sink. And I look at it, and boy, it looked orange. It was stained. I mean, there was something going on. Didn't look like rust to me, but...
Hair dye?
So I said to her, when did this happen? You know, did me, like, I thought maybe the tile guy did something, or, you know, some construction guy, you know, those construction guys are. So I said, when does this happen? She said, well, it doesn't happen all the time. I said, when does it happen? She said, every time I cook spaghetti. So I gave her half a can of this. I said, use this when after you make spaghetti.
Really?
Now, the purpose is not to pick on the poor lady with the spaghetti. It's if you have a problem, you don't have a problem, I have a problem. And I think Alice will tell you that we jump up. Sometimes the people are saying, well, I just call Alice. Faucets have more parts, they will have more issues. Sinks, 9 times out of 10, they didn't clean it. Or they're afraid to clean it, or they're, you know.
Honestly, with sinks, if we send one of our installers out, they can usually clean it, whatever
and
they
all
take
is a
out
matter
there.
of cleaning it.
It's usually not an issue. Faucets, you know, they're always taken care of within a day.
Yeah, I've always had good feedback from you.
Yeah.
This, oops, sorry. This isn't what this sink is an annealed sink. This is a good sink. It's the advantage of this sink is it's made out of the same steel as our other sinks. You'll see it doesn't have the weld mark here. Okay. This one does not have those imperfections, but you can see if you want to try one before you leave. Feel that one and feel this one. You'll see how much lighter this one is. This is a good sink. That's a great sink.
Gotcha.
What
Okay,
gauge
this-
is that one?
Huh?
What gauge is that one?
This is, well, this was 18 gauge, but it's lighter because more is, you know, we're stretching, you've stretched material out of it. Okay? This is brand new. I'm gonna leave this, if you would leave it for
Okay.
Troy. He doesn't even know about this yet.
Okay.
We just got these in.
Oh, so
Okay.
it's a new sink.
Yes,
Cheaper than,
yes. Not as good,
right.
but
Right.
the market today, sometimes you have to give people the free sink. Okay? This is a sink that you can stand behind, will stand behind, just like that sink. It's just not as, you know, that's why, remember I told you, cheaper the sink, the more
I'm
pads?
sure you will.
Are the templates the same?
No.
I know he keeps trying to find less expensive.
Okay, grates. These are an extra cost item. Ours are more expensive than a lot of them. I do have a collection at home that I didn't bring with me of ones with plastic, with the welds bad, the thinner steel. These are made out of 304 stainless, just like the sink. A lot of people, nobody asks what steel the grates are made of. They don't have to be certified, so if there's cheating, they're cheating on here. You'll see a lot of them with white feet. It's always better to have black feet because you will get little dirt and stuff in there. So the black feet cover all that. If you have a problem with if your customer loses these, you call us up, we send them new feet. If you're going to, you want to clean it, you just take those things, just pop right off. You take them off, put it in the dishwasher, and you're good to go. Okay, so that's, okay, any questions? Okay, I think, are you all familiar with the faucets? Okay, let's talk a little bit about the faucets.
Before you go into that,
Yeah.
do we low divide stainless sinks?
We brought in a pallet of them, and they sat for 3 years. We couldn't give them away. So the answer to your question is no, because we can't get it. I'll tell you, our biggest seller is that 3018, the big single sink bowl.
Yeah, I just quoted that one the other, and it's a good price.
That one is, you can pass these around. The last,
It's taped and
the double equal is
really
absolutely
big if you open that cabinet.
been our biggest seller for years. The big single almost caught it last year. That's how much, absolutely. Because, think about it, this was designed, you put soapy water on one side and you rinse on the other side. With the dishwasher, nobody does that anymore. Now, if we had a new bride and thing, we'd teach her how to wash dishes.
I have the dishwasher in my house.
Yeah. You guys don't have this one?